All right. Hopefully that stimulated some good discussion with you all. That was one of the coolest things that we had been a part of with the Wylie School District. You were actually there to view it. Can you just talk about it from your experience, what you witnessed?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just the quality of people and just their hearts, their intellect, their care factor for kids, and not only what they're doing, but how they're doing it. I mean, it just, I think we talked about something where it's way cool, and I feel it here too. With this, it's so cool when there's things that you hold dear, and things that are true, and things that really kind of inspire and motivate you. But then nobody else sees it, or no one else really cares to even talk about it or make it a thing. And it's not like what's, I don't know, maybe popular or any of that. And so it's cool when you can meet other people that see what you see and feel what you feel. And I felt that there.
Your thoughts?
Well, I will say, first of all, when I was able to observe Dave interacting with the Wylie people about circles and about restorative justice, that was to me just such an inspiring thing to watch, because of the fact that you are trying something that is completely out of the realm of most coaches. And the reason behind it is because it feels to me like you're trying to influence your players in a different way. It's not about just getting someone to do something. It's more about getting them to understand why they're doing it and getting them to want to do it. And it's really revolutionary in the way that you're approaching it. And I have a lot of respect for that as a coach.
Yeah, I just look at it and I'm thinking about how you said that sometimes you have to, because it's not like, hey, this person was sleeping in class. It's beyond that, and it might be like you need almost like a strength coach there in case the circle blows up, so they can restrain the guys. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been two times where we've had someone come for that instance.
How do you approach the person? You just say, hey, this could get sideways and I need your muscle?
Yeah, and so we'll go around, and when you get to that person, they just kind of do this and kind of keep going. Everyone knows why they're there. But I think, I think the runway that's up to that point is on, it's bigger than football. It's mastery of craft, it's mastery of self. It's using football as a platform to show the world who you are as a person. It's, training for something is train for everything is training for something. And so it's all of those things. I mean, those standards, I think, are there. And so when they don't match it, which is, I think that's the other piece too, is you fight that with the staff, because I think and parts of me as well, when I let stuff from the outside get in, is that I want to refrain from the tit for tat and I'm hurt, so I'm going to hurt this, or so much of it is football can be used for good so much of it is what are we going to do with our pain? What are we going to do with my discomfort, with my frustration? And so to not take it out on other people, but to use it for good, I think is what a lot of this allows you to do. And I think you have to see it that way, because if you don't, and you're in the tit for tat thing, then that's at the end of the day, that really doesn't get anything done. I know the players at first, they wanted that because that's what they're used to. And I'm sure the coaches were. That was never really expressed to me. I think they know me enough to know that something's coming down the line that's a little different. And so the players, though, initially wanted it, but I think they're used to it, or they like it now because they feel that they're seen and they're heard, and then they're valued.
Yeah, I think it's just so powerful, because what we were asking Wylie is, and this is a great question for you all to write down and think about, is, because you were looking at staff feedback. How do you conduct peer feedback without creating a toxic environment? Think about that question and how you might answer that. You just came off a pro stint trying to help an organization, and you see how this kind of information that players share can be weaponized and almost work against what you're trying to do.
Completely. And you know, we talked about this while we were at that meeting with Wylie about, you know, we talked about the circle creates a lot less hierarchy, right? So I use the example of if Dave is running a staff meeting and he has a coordinator, which is really high, just below the head coach, and a grad assistant in the same room. You know, the coordinator is going to have way more experience and time in the game than the grad assistant. But the grad assistant probably has a lot more real knowledge of what's happening on the team, like what's real on the team. But if that hierarchy exists, they're never going to share that because they won't be close enough to do that. But if it's a circle and everyone's being heard, like Dave mentioned, now all of a sudden, you know, the coordinator can be a learner from the grad assistant and vice versa. And I think the circle environment creates learners versus knowers. I think the hierarchy creates a reward for a knower and not for the learner. And that's what I love the most about the circles.
And that's hard to create. What are the challenges with that?
Well, I think when Landry was here and he was talking, you know, about the hero's journey, and I'm such a big fan of that, and so I think like any story that you see or that you read, right? There's some type of call to adventure, and then there's kind of like from the protagonist's view, there's trying to solve a problem or fix something without being vulnerable, and it's failed attempt after failed attempt after failed attempt, and then finally there's, you know, prior to the you know, near the end of the movie or the story, where he's finally vulnerable. And I think that's similar to what he's talking about, making peace with the pit, and then you're transformed. And I think it's just it's that vulnerability. You know, I think that's what they're running from, much like, you know, in these heroes' journeys, when you're in the circle, to be vulnerable, to feel that it's a safe space, to, you know, to not want to protect and to open up. I think there has to be a runway to that, man, with kind of like what you say is what you do, and the same with your group. And, you know, I think it's got to be modeled for them to live it. But when you have that, I think you can really transform some lives.
I feel that this is the future of coaching because of the dynamic power shift at all levels. So at the pro level, the coach has no power.
One thing you'll never hear an NBA coach say: get on the line.
That's true.
It doesn't exist at that level.
And so that is such a great teacher to learn that you have to be able to coach through influence as opposed to power. In college, I think that dynamic is shifting because of things like the transfer portal and NIL and some of the things we've talked about today. And so if you're a coach who has only taught through use of power over, and now you are trying to reach people who don't want to be reached by that method and actually will rebel against that method, and you don't have another set of tools in your toolbox, that becomes a really challenging situation for you as a coach because you run out of options. And again, it could be hurting the team even more than helping the team with the way that you're trying to do it. So to me, you know, Dave's approach and what Wylie's doing is such a democratic approach to getting the same results. You're changing behavior, but you're changing behavior in a way that the people who you're affecting actually want to change their behavior.
The other thing I would say too is that there's so much what happens with, especially with coaches and players, just that relationship. So I think if you were to take it to business, it would be, hey, we're having a meeting, you know, we're in a boardroom. Are there any questions? Does anyone have any thoughts? And there's nothing. And then you break the meeting, and then everyone talks crap about that person or about what was said, you know, in their individual, you know, offices.
Raise your hand if you can relate to that.
It's the water cooler effect.
Right, and so the same thing happens with coaches and players. And so coaches will generally come out and say something, and it's generally pretty strong and forceful. And the player, knows enough to maybe no disrespect or any of that, and takes it, but is fully frustrated, and then just goes off into all these other directions. The one direction he's not going is to the coach, and doesn't feel that he can, or doesn't feel that he'll listen, or doesn't feel that relationship, and so he'll go, parents, learning specialists, maybe assistant trainer, athletic trainer, maybe assistant nutritionist. So this whole thing would kind of build, and it just becomes a whole thing, where the circle gives you the ability to build that safety to where an honest conversation can happen.
And those honest conversations, I think we've talked about this all day, but those honest conversations, I think, become the basis for building trust. And those trust building moments are what allow you to have influence with players. I think you talk all the time about, if you are just providing answers to your athletes, you'll get outgrown. But if you're providing them the opportunity and a platform to create their own answers, you will always be available as a thinking partner for those people. And I think that's very true.
Well stated. Let's give it up for them.